There's a systemic culture, I guess you would call it, of entitlement in Alberta, according to the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Documents obtained through a Freedom of Information request revealed that the province is rolling out the welcome mat for many wealthy Calgarians in subsidized housing. Let's get to Mike Blanchard on this story. Mike, explain that one.
Pat. Yeah, well, I'll tell you something. It's a pretty infuriating problem. The Canadian Taxpayers Federation found out through an access to information request that many people who are living in subsidized housing units in Calgary are anything but poor. Now, the Calgary Housing Company is a social housing agency. It's an arm of the city of Calgary, subsidizes low-income earners, but it's meant to be for people who need a hand up, people who may be homeless if they didn't have some sort of a subsidized rental break. So, I mean, I think that that's a pretty good thing. But the one thing that the Canadian Taxpayers Federation found out, well, here, look at the breakdown. There are more than 1,200 people living in subsidized housing in Calgary with incomes over $50,000. Now, if you go all the way up the list to, say, $100,000, 47 people making six-figure salaries living in subsidized housing in Calgary. I think a lot of people find that pretty appalling. Derek Fildebrandt with the Canadian Taxpayers Federation thinks that, this is not just a Calgary problem. He thinks it's systemic across the province, but here's what he has to say.
In Calgary alone, there is more than 1,200 people making middle to high incomes living in social housing. That's $50,000 ranging all the way up to $172,000. The numbers we found are astounding. I mean, dozens of people making more than $100,000 living in government housing subsidized by taxpayers. It's disgusting.
Now, Pat, a spokesman with the Calgary Housing Company thinks that the problem is on the road to being fixed. One thing that happened a couple of years ago in 2011, they fixed these short-term leases that were introduced, and it allows income testing to exist. But that was 2 years ago, and you still have more than 1,200 people living in these units that really probably shouldn't be, applicable, shouldn't qualify for subsidized rent. So they've known about this problem for 2 years. It still exists. One of the other problems with this is a lot of tenants have what's called a grandfathered lease. So they can't be evicted. They're not subject to review. And I think what's really appalling about this is there are 3,000 people on the waiting list to get into subsidized housing. So 3,000 people who probably need this service who can't get in because there's 1,200 people who don't need the service that are taking up space. One Calgary alderman even defends the rental abuse, saying that, well, at least the people who are high income earners are paying higher rents. But when you've got a waiting list, it's pretty indefensible that sort of thing happens. Now, one thing that's got to happen if things are going to change, even though the City of Calgary runs this operation, Pat, it's up to the provincial government. They've got to make changes to the Municipal Act, to the way that this sort of operation is run. And here's hoping that public pressure on the provincial government will have indeed just that happen.
Okay, Mike. Thanks so much.
Anytime.